Thanks for being on today's program and doing a spot of childcare over there at the same time. Okay, now you've got a very special project happening, haven't you?
Yes, we do. Yes.
Okay, so who wants to tell us about the project?
Well, we're running a forum on the 6th of December in the Blue Mountains at Warrimoo for Human Rights Day, and it's a public forum. We've called it Women and Social Injustice.
Culture, tradition and religion can affect women's rights. That's our main theme.
Okay. Now I can see that this plan isn't working.
Well, it was a good idea.
Okay, so we'll go to plan B.
Okay.
Which means Tom will work the camera and I'll take Finny in the lavatory. Come on, sweetness. My name's Jan Wood. Welcome to today's episode of Coffee Break. And today we're here in my dining room and I've got two special guests, Celeste and Gabi, who've come down from the Blue Mountains. They're organising a forum on women's rights on the 6th of December in Warrimoo in the mountains. So I'd like to now introduce you to Gabi and Celeste and my little granddaughter, Finny.
My name's Gabi and I'm interested in the position of women in society, and I don't like to see women trampled in terms of their human rights.
My name's Celeste, and similarly, I'm also from the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom and the New South Wales branch and the group in the Blue Mountains that exists. And we're very interested in all aspects of women's rights and justice for women, and also with a focus on the effects that women and children suffer because of war or because of nuclear issues and that sort of thing.
One problem is that people tend to show automatic respect for culture. If you say, oh, it's their culture, people say, oh, okay. But what we find is that women's entitlements just get subsumed under people's automatically thinking culture has to be complied with and respected. It's not that we don't want to respect other people's cultures, but well, culture isn't always benevolent. There have been many, many cultures that have had a terrible cost in human suffering, not just affecting women. I mean, there's been widespread cannibalism, slavery, human sacrifice, and so on, but in cultural practices affecting women, there's been foot binding, witch burning, scold's bridals in England, where they used to put a metal cage around the woman's head with a metal thing pressing down the tongue. There's female genital mutilation, and there's honour killing and forced marriage, and you name it. There have been so many cultural practices that have been really, really bad for women, that what we are hoping is that people will start to be a little bit more critical of culture and not just say, oh, okay, it's their culture, it must be all right.
The whole issue about how our society and our culture just kind of becomes like the water that we live in, and we don't see the erosion of women's rights or the place of women in society because of the small, subtle changes that occur. And sometimes it's only when you stand outside of it and have a look and ask some key questions about, do women have equal access to the same situations that men have access to?
To health, to education, to moving around freely on the streets, to being in charge of their own sex life, to being able to participate in public life.
Exactly, and looking at those things, taking from a period of time, and then have a look and see the assumptions that you have about women having those equal rights. And there's, even today in our society, you can see that's not the case. There's lots of examples of where women don't have the same access to the things that men have access to, despite the fact that we have a belief that we do have the same access to these things. And so one of the drivers for this forum was to raise those questions again and to get the community to start thinking about, what's really going on, and not just assume that all the issues from the 60s and the 70s about female liberation as being an old thing that is already solved in our society, because the reality is that that's not really the case.
Yeah, people think those battles have been won, but they haven't really. We've made gains, but it's possible that we may lose them, and there are still many areas where women are excluded from certain jobs, like being priests or imams or lots of other areas.
Often we see women in our society now taking these senior leadership roles, but they're kind of really just emulating all of the things that men do. So they're taking on a quite masculine role, and they're not actually bringing to those leadership positions the things that they could be bringing as women, because they can't bring them into that arena, because the structures or some part or aspects of the interaction doesn't allow for women to really exist in those spaces. So even though we see women in some of those positions, we see them acting very male-like, if you like, rather than bringing some of the more female attributes. The situation's changing, but by and large there's still a huge chasm between men and women in that kind of area.
So we'd love people to come along to our forum. It's at 2 o'clock on Saturday the 6th of December in Warramoo Community Hall. Entry's free of charge, or I think we've got a gold coin.
We're asking for a gold coin donation, yeah.
And it's really just to talk about these issues. Anyone who's interested in the effect of culture and tradition on women, and to ask each other questions and just generally raise the profile of being a bit more critical about culture and tradition. People are all basically the same. We don't want to be just automatically respectful of every aspect of other people's cultures.
Or automatically accepting of everything that a culture might bring, or that a religion might bring, or even that a social group might bring into the situation that we are existing in. And through that process lose rights, or lose the position where women have managed to get to in the last 40 odd years overnight, without realising it, that these things have been lost. A little bit like the work choices legislation, where kind of like overnight people thought they were gaining something but ended up losing a whole lot more. So you can all of a sudden think that you've gained something, but actually have given up a whole lot more, which is not so good.
And women's rights are going backward in Iraq since the war, in Indonesia, in Malaysia, in lots of places. Their economic independence is being undermined. They're not as free as they were to walk around on the streets, particularly at night or in the evenings. And they're expected to comply with their family's wishes in terms of their choice of a partner. It's really only in the last 50 or 100 years that women have actually had much of a choice in the matter. In many places they still don't have any choice at all.
Yeah, there's a very strong cultural influences on how women exist in society, and you can look at it from the point of view that, well, in China, the cultural situation in China, everybody in China agrees with that, mostly by and large. Now, whether it's right or wrong is a different question. But in Australia, we have a lot of different cultural groups, and so we're more faced with the issue of, well, what is the right value for the community? Because maybe in a street there'll be 7 or 8 different values in 7 or 8 different houses about how women should exist, and so we're trying to raise those questions about, well, what do we as a community really think the value of women in society should be, and hopefully keep those questions high on the agenda and consciousness of people, so that we don't lose those things.
Many people assume that those battles were won 30 years ago and there's no longer any issue.
Exactly. But that we just have to look at some statistics that are available freely in our society to see that women still don't have equal pay for an equal job. And, that's a really fundamental point. And if you argue the case that, well, women are doing jobs that are worth less than men, so therefore their pay is less, why do we still undervalue the jobs that women are doing by and large? Why do we accept that being a teacher or being a nurse or being a carer is less valuable than being an accountant or being a businessman or being an industrialist or a banker? Why have we got this? Why do we accept without question that this difference is acceptable when the things that are important for society are education, are health, are our children in childcare? And these are all the areas that we tend to still, after all these battles, have issues to deal with.
Still the pressure on girls to look good and be thin. And in fact, the number of girls with anorexia under 13 is growing rapidly. I think a third of children under 18 with anorexia presenting at hospital with anorexia are now under 13, and it's being found in 5-year-olds and 6-year-olds, and that's because they're so anxious about wanting to look good and be attractive to boys. You don't find 5 and 6-year-old boys with anorexia because they're so anxious about being attractive to girls. There's still this uneven playing field.
Yeah, an uneven expectation about what the role of an individual is going to be in society. So that there's still these really fundamental, deep social, cultural things that our Western culture is still grappling with. But then in Australia we have the extra added advantage of a lot of other multicultural issues in on top that must impinge and probably help us to raise those questions, because we can see in another culture how women are treated so much different to men. So that raises those questions for us, and that's one of the drivers for this forum, for us to create more conversation in the community about these issues and see what can be done. And one of the key things that we did in choosing the speakers was to invite people who would come and talk about programs and projects that are in place that are trying to address the disparity or the inequities that are in existence, so that it's not all about complaining. It's about, well, what are we actually trying to do, and get people to realise
some examples of successful case studies where people have tackled these sorts of things and are tackling them effectively.
Well, I think that there was a big, from the International Women's Day conversation that Gabi led, one of the outcomes that came out of that conversation really was a recognition in the room that this is only we just scratched the surface of a conversation. We didn't have a complete conversation. There was a lot more to discuss, a lot more issues to bring out, a lot more for us as white Western women to really understand about different cultures in our community. And not in a fashion of, being superior and telling other people, oh, you should have these values or these rights or you should be like this, but more from the perspective of trying to understand, in some sort of solidarity kind of situation, I guess, the condition that other women are experiencing, and see where the connections can exist between our different social structures or different cultural conditions.
And also maintain the gains we've made in the last 50 years. And it's only 100 years since women got the vote, isn't it? Yeah. And in some places they still don't have it.
Yeah.
Kuwait, they got the vote in 2006. Yeah. Saudi Arabia, they're not able to vote yet.
Yeah.
Or drive.
Yeah, or not openly. There's so there's a lot of things, internationally, and then there's even just looking at, Australia, and Victoria's only just made it legal to have an abortion. So, I remember sitting at home with my partner thinking, wow, that's pretty amazing. When that came on the news, it was like, I thought that was already the case, but obviously there was one state in Australia where it wasn't the case. And, how many other other laws, you know, are still disparate between states in Australia for women's basic rights. It's quite frightening, really, when you sit down and think about it.
One thing about culture is that people really invest their ego into it. They feel proud that something or other is our tradition, it's our culture. And I read recently about a demonstration in Sierra Leone in West Africa of women who were demanding that female genital mutilation continue and criticising the people who want to have it stopped. And they were saying, it's our tradition. People tend to put a higher value on their traditions and their cultures than their own real health and rights.
One of the reasons that the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom in the Blue Mountains decided to get involved in this project and try to get this forum off the ground is because this whole issue surrounding what are women's rights is one of the core central themes for Wilpf's mission, if you like. And so even though the movement started in 1915, basically as a result of the First World War and women getting together from many nations to try to get other solutions to the war at that time from happening, and that even though there's been a strong anti-war focus in Wilpf, these things are closely linked with women's rights, because war is one of the arenas in our social situations that generally decimates women's rights across the board very easily and very quickly. And so so the organisation as a whole has sort of like many arms, but those two big focuses, and looking to establish and create and get accepted in the community fundamental women's rights equivalent to human rights is one of the ways of building that strength in the community, so that if conflicts do occur, there might be, you know, a greater chance for women's rights not to be so overrun. That's the way I look at it anyway. But there's also a strong anti-war focus and demilitarisation focus. So today me and Gabi have mainly been talking about the forum and the reasons why we've been putting the forum on, but there's been another person involved in getting this event up off the ground, and that's been Susie from the Blue Mountains Women's Health Centre. And she's been extremely instrumental in getting speakers and getting the whole thing working, which has been fantastic.
Yes, I'm getting muddled.
Oh, I hate to cut into Picasso's artwork here. What do I do? Just go like that.
Yes, I'd like to say happy birthday to Wilpf, because it's an organisation of such a great history and tradition, and women acting for themselves and for everybody, and it's such a grand tradition, so I'm here to honour that.
My name's Jenny Madeline, and I'd very much like to wish Wilpf a 90th birthday, happy 90th birthday, and I hope it survives to celebrate many more birthdays.
I've really enjoyed today, and I just like to say happy birthday. And it's been really good, and especially me as a young person, I've been finding it very informative, especially knowing what's happened before I've been born. So it's just been really interesting just being able to talk to these people today, and I've really enjoyed it. And the cake's lovely too, of course.
Happy birthday, Women's International League for Peace and Freedom.
Yes, I call myself an ancient activist. I've been a member of Wilpf for about the last 20 years, and my real passions are for social justice, equality and peace. Very, very happy birthday to Wilpf and many, many more to follow.
And I'd like to wish Wilpf a happy 90th birthday, the Women's International League of Peace and Freedom, and I want to be around for the 100th birthday. And yeah, so happy birthday, Wilpf.
Hello, I'm Pamela Lemoine, and I've been a member of Wilpf for 10 years, and I'm also the national convener for Peace for AFUW, but UNN, but I think Wilpf's the one that's really at the heart of all the peace movements and going for so long, and happy 90th birthday.
I would like to wish Wilpf a very happy birthday. I've been a member nearly since its inception in the 1960s. I wasn't always able to go to their meetings on Tuesdays, and I was looking forward to retiring so I could go. Then they changed the day to Saturday. But anyway, I've been a member, and they're a very worthwhile bunch of women to belong to. So I went with the Wilpf contingent crossing the Harbour Bridge against the Vietnam War.
I was absolutely delighted to be a member of the Sydney Trade Union Choir singing for this 90th anniversary of Wilpf. We actually had the pleasure of singing for your 80th anniversary and also for Ed Gilmore's 100th birthday, so we have that connection. And we also dedicated one verse of one of our songs, The Whole Wide World Around, to Wilpf. We wrote it for the 80th and we sang it again for the 90th. My mum Betty was a long-standing member of this organisation. She used to call them the Wilpfs, and she really enjoyed the organisation. She had a lot of respect for it. She was really dedicated to the fight for peace because of her own experience during the Second World War, having been a refugee from Nazi Germany, and she instilled in myself and my sister the need to always be vigilant and be prepared to work really hard against war. And my sister's already a member, and I've just filled out my membership form today. So there'll be a bit of a block tradition continued.
Happy birthday, Wilpf. It's just been a lovely afternoon, and it's just wonderful, and I'm looking to the 100th year celebrations. Happy birthday, Wilpf.
Older women raging with the lovely, actually they had the lovely sunflower on the paper. So maybe some of you would like to start a group like that, and we cooperate, working together. So that's all I had to say.
My name's Angela Drury, and I've been a member of Wilpf since around about 1982-83, so that's over 20 years. And I came across Wilpf women who were members of People for Nuclear Disarmament, which I joined after one of the massive Palm Sunday peace marches. But I remember something that Eva Cox said, and she said that our work as people who are aware is not to avoid conflict, but to learn how to manage conflict, because inevitably there will be disagreements between people, and we have to learn how to manage that and not get upset about it, and still be able to sit in a circle and a meeting and be friends.
Hi, I'm Anne Young from the Humanist Society, and I've been invited today to say happy birthday to Wilpf, 90 years young.
Wilpf, a very happy 90th birthday. I hope I'm here for the 100th.
Happy birthday, Wilpf.
Happy birthday, Wilpf. Happy 90th birthday.
Happy birthday, Wilpf. Well done, 90 years. Keep going.
Happy birthday, Wilpf.
Happy birthday. Happy birthday to you.
Happy birthday. Many, many, many to come. I hope I'll be still alive when it's the 100th.
I'd like to take the opportunity of thanking everybody who have come here and joined us in the 90th Wilpf birthday.